Hey YouTube, it's Jeff at Darkmoon Metals. Welcome to the first day of daylight savings time if you're living in the United States. Yes, here in our country, we bend time to our will to better suit our needs. And I think it's very interesting that we do that because it's kind of an old archaic thing. And to paraphrase a Native American elder, only the US government would cut a foot off of one end of a blanket, sew it to the other end, and think they have a longer blanket. The real reason for the video today is to address a viewer comment that was left on my video, The Alternative to a Train Track for Beginners. This is for like beginning blacksmiths. There are a lot of people out there who covet train rail to make anvils out of because they're easier to find than regular anvils sometimes. And I got a comment this morning that says, problem is the rail is hardened similarly to an anvil, or even a sledgehammer head. A random block of steel might be okay for really basic beginner stuff. I would tend to agree since the title of my video was Alternative to the Train Track for Beginners. Anyway, moving on. A hardened piece which provide rebound makes the whole job much easier and safer. I have no idea why a hardened piece of steel as a banging surface would be safer than a regular piece of mild steel, but we'll just let that one float out in the wind for a while. So, what am I here to prove today? Well, I'm here to prove that train rail is not as hard as you guys might think it is. So how hard is train rail? Well, this is not full gauge. This is not the gauge that you see on Amtrak lines or the train tracks that are running all across the country. This is a little bit smaller. I found this in a scrapyard and I'm going to be using it as a bench block. I'm going to mill down the top and the sides and make it nice, and we're going to use it for Vered and her jewelry making. But it's not hard. I just cut through it with a bandsaw, and I can tell you that my bandsaw blade is not magical. It is not sprinkled with pixie dust or anything else that will make it cut through hardened steel. So how hard is full-size or standard gauge train rail? Well, I've got a 1 foot long piece set up in the drill press. Let's go find out. All right, YouTube, what you're looking at is a full-size rail measuring 7 inches tall. The rail surface itself is 3 inches wide. And we are going to use this, a brand new Black & Decker drill bit, finest quality Walmart has to offer. So this is not a magical tungsten alloy, nothing like that. This is just regular, right out of my big old box store down the road. Now this drill bit should probably break if it's going through hardened steel. Well, let's take a look. That's the softest hardened steel I've ever drilled through. Yeah. Well, I've got the rail resting on top of my regular anvil. Let's see how deep we went. Wow. That's impressive. This little drill bit should not be able to drill that far into hardened steel. That's because it's not hardened steel. It may be harder than something that you'll find at a run-of-the-mill scrapyard. It may be harder than, you know, hot-rolled mild steel, but it is not hardened. In case in point, I have been using this piece of track as an anvil for a while now. At least I did until I got my regular anvil. And I want to show you some of the marks. You zoom in a little bit. Those are all tool marks. Those are all hammer marks. This is from where I was practicing. I didn't really have a good hand-eye coordination with the hammer. I kept hitting the rail rather than the stock, and it left all sorts of indentations in this puppy. But what I'd like to do is actually turn this around, and I'm going to do the one last thing that you may consider to test the hardness of steel. Make sure I'm in frame here. All right, I'm going to zoom in on the edge a little bit here. It's a pretty sharp edge, isn't it? Well, I happen to have a file. We're going to see how hard this material really is. Now, I don't have, excuse me, I don't have a Rockwell hardness tester. I don't have anything like that. But I know hardened steel, a file will skate across. Let's see if that works. She bites right in. I don't know if you can see the bevel that this is starting to make. But you can even tell by the sound that this is not hardened steel. The last thing I want to address before I go back over to the bench is rebound. He made a comment that the train track or the rail will have better rebound than the random block of steel that I found at the scrapyard. And yes, this is the same block of steel that I used. There's the hole in the side of it. I pulled it off the post for this demonstration. Rebound is not what you might think it is. There are people out there who believe rebound has a lot to do with the tone of the anvil. And the tone of the anvil is kind of important. It tells you if it's made out of a good quality of material. A steel anvil will ring, as a cast iron anvil will give you a kind of a thud sound. I did a basic explanation of this in my anvil video. I will put a link to that in the description if you're interested in watching it. But rebound isn't the ring of the anvil. Rebound means that the material that I am banging against, the material that the anvil is made out of, if I'm working two sides of a taper, the force that I am putting in from the hammer should be reflected from the anvil itself. So it'll allow me to work only two sides. The anvil will do as much work as the hammer. If you're using a cast iron anvil that's kind of got a lifeless thud to it, what happens is that anvil will absorb some of the hammer's energy. It's not going to reflect it all back. So if you're working two sides of a taper, what might happen is your taper might not form evenly. That is rebound. Now, these are two pieces of steel. Don't listen to the pitch. The pitch is not the key here. Listen to how the hammer hits the metal. If I was tapping out Morse code, let's say, see if the code is the same or close to being the same. Just listen. And I am doing my best to hit these with even blows. I'm not trying to make one look better than the other, because what's the benefit of that? You're not learning anything. This does have a little bit more of a bounce at the back end. This will jump a couple extra times as compared to this. But this is also kind of a rusted surface, so I don't know if one is having, I don't know if that's a factor. I am not an expert when it comes to metallurgy. I can't even tell you what this is made out of and what this is made out of, other than the fact they are both magnetic, they are both steel. So at the end of the day, what are you really getting out of a piece of rail? Well, you're getting a piece of metal that's conveniently shaped and easily modified into something that can closely resemble an anvil. There are beautiful anvils out there that master smiths have used for years, and they will wrap chain around the base of the anvil, or they'll stick a magnet on the side of it, or they'll do something else to deaden the sound, because the ring, it's not attractive after using it for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. It will wear on your nerves. So the tone of the material really doesn't mean anything. And case in point, this is a piece of EMT conduit. This is the crappiest metal known to man. You can buy it extremely cheap. I mean, in some cases you can get this stuff cheaper for an 8-foot length than you can a 2x4. And it's all on how it's held or secured. Got my little hammer here. Doesn't sound too bad, right? You change how you secure it, hit it with the same hammer. Easy enough to understand, right guys? Alright YouTube, before I wrap up the video, I just want to say a couple of things. One, When I get comments like this, I don't take it personally, I don't take it to heart. I honestly, at one point in my life, believed that train rail had to be made out of something extraordinary. I mean, if you think about it, you've got something that weighs more than a 3-story house coming at you at 60 miles an hour, and it's hard to believe that anything normal, regular materials would support that amount of weight. And I, at one time, did think that rail was hardened. And then I started to learn more about metal. Not necessarily train track, but metal in general. As a welder, I know about things like the heat affected zone. And I know that if they have a hardened material, they're not going to thermite weld the ends together and then leave it to air cool and anneal. You're not going to have that level of inconsistency in the rail. Also, if you go on Google and just type in train track damage, you'll see train tracks that have been through earthquakes, train tracks that have had the banks they were on completely eroded away. Well, the rails are sagging, or they're like really wild angles and stuff. Hardened material just can't flex like that. It would explode first because it's extremely brittle. But this is all part of the learning curve, and I am actually grateful that the person left me this comment because it did give me an opportunity to give this demonstration and maybe share a little bit about what I know. Now, no, I am not a professional. I do not know metallurgy. I don't work in a steel fabrication plant or production plant. I'm just a random guy like everyone else on YouTube. Yes, there are 1 or 2 people out there who are experts in the bunch, but basically we are just a group of people sharing what we know. And if you have believed, like I did, that rail is harder than common steel and it's worth going out there trying to find a piece and risking a felony on your record or getting hit by a train, you're not getting a lot out of the experience. You're getting something that you could find in your average everyday scrapyard. So I hope it gave you something to think about. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I will definitely take a look at them. But for now, and until the next video, this has been Jeff at Darkmoon Metals. I will see you again soon.